has reduced by 84%, making trade more efficient in our region. This is why intra-EAC trade holds the highest position among trading blocs in our continent at 25%. With a combined GDP of US dollars 350 billion, a population of approximately 350 million, and an expansive area of 5 million square kilometers, the EAC member states are an attractive investment destination. East African Community total trade in 2022 stood at US dollars 74 billion. The same year, Africa accounted for 44% and 25% of EAC's total exports and imports, respectively. This assembly, likewise, has enabled the community implement the Common Market Protocol, which guarantees free cross-border movement of persons, labor, services, and capital, as well as the right of establishment and residence through the use of standard identification systems, harmonized travel documents, mutual recognition of qualifications, and harmonized labor and social policy frameworks. The EAC e-passport is now internationally recognized, while several member states now permit citizens to travel using the national identity cards. Visa fees for cross-border movements have mostly been eliminated, and cross-border communities now enjoy free movement. Students can enroll and transfer with greater ease. Regional institutions now implement mutual recognition agreements for various professional qualifications. To actualize the East African Monetary Union by 2031, because that's our aspiration, this assembly must provide the necessary framework to anchor the full implementation of the customs union and common market protocols, especially through the establishment of vital organizations such as the Monetary Institute, Bureau of Statistics, financial services, as well as the surveillance and enforcement commissions. I know this is already in your radar, and it is our hope, as members of the summit, that you will discharge your responsibility of making sure these instruments are in place to facilitate the greater integration of our union. Additionally, the Assembly should facilitate the convergence of criteria for macroeconomic governance and provide for the harmonization of both fiscal and monetary policies. The fourth pillar of East African integration, the political federation, depends on effective cooperation in the fields of political affairs, regional peace and security, as well as defense cooperation. The transitional model for our federation is already in place in the form of the East African Political Confederation, under which we have been able to deploy the East African Community Regional Force, for example, to restore peace and security in Eastern DRC, while other achievements under the transitional model include the Chief Justice's Forum to strengthen the rule of law, enhance access to justice, and facilitate the evolution of a distinct East African jurisprudence. Similarly, the other platforms have been established to enable progressive engagement between national institutions through the exchange of information, skills, and capacity, and developing common regional standards in such diverse fields as good governance, election management, and human rights institutions, and institutions that govern anti-corruption. We now have in place protocols on defense, as well as peace and security, together with the EAC Mutual Defense Pact, the EAC Early Warning Mechanism, Protocol on Combating Illegal Drug Trafficking, and EAC Interreligious Council, and a framework for conducting public participation on the establishment of the political federation, which has already been concluded in Kenya, in Uganda, and in Burundi. And we already made a decision last year in Arusha that that process must be concluded in the other remaining states by June this year, so that we can have a way forward. And I want to tell you, when this exercise was conducted in Kenya, it received overwhelming endorsement by the people of Kenya. It received similar endorsement in Burundi and in Uganda. I want to urge members of parliament who are here from our sister states of Tanzania, Rwanda, DRC, and South Sudan to assist the EAC Secretariat and the team that is mandated to carry out this exercise, that this exercise be concluded as we have asked from the Summit of the Heads of State by June, so that we can begin to make steps in the right direction. And if there is an institution that will assist us in actualizing the aspirations of East Africans, it is this parliament. There is no doubt that as a result of the progress made in entrenching our regional integration as a social, cultural, political, and economic reality, East Africa is emerging as the beacon of unity, stability, security, and progress, and the beating heart of Pan-African integration and the engine of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, as well as the epicenter of Africa's move to position itself as the next frontier of global investment and industrial transformation. That is why, honorable members, we have grown tremendously from 3 founding partner states to 8 countries, connecting the Indian Ocean to the Atlantic, serving 350 million citizens and forging a major market. These achievements are chiefly due to the contribution, to a great extent, by the East African Legislative Assembly. The work that this assembly does matters to us as governments and matters to the people of East Africa. We must therefore remain focused on what is at stake, committed to complete the outstanding work, and determined to do our very best at all times when called upon to serve the people of our region. Peace, stability, and security must remain our foremost concern, because they are the foundations that underlie all pursuit of growth, development, and prosperity. A peaceful, stable, and secure East Africa is a competitive and prosperous East Africa. As we work and as we continue to work on such challenges to the growth of trade and investment, as persistent on non-tariff barriers, distracting and costly trade disputes, conflicting tax regimes, weak enforcement, and inadequate resources, we must also take seriously the fundamental shortcomings to our agenda, that is low involvement of the private sector, even as we prepare to get and stay on top of emerging threats in the digital space as well as climate change. Now that we have adequately established that this assembly possesses what it takes to drive our vision of a prosperous, competitive, secure, stable, and politically united East Africa, I take this opportunity, honorable members, to pose a few issues to the honorable members gathered here. It is important for us to lay a strong foundation for East Africa to make a transformative contribution to Pan-African integration and the emergence of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area as the next hub of global investment trade, and industry. In order to do this, we have to complete the implementation of all the pillars of EAC integration urgently, and equally critically align our integration agenda with a broader African transformational paradigm under the Africa we want. Secondly, we must provide a strong framework for achieving rapid leapfrogging and the development of sustainable competitive advantage in emerging high-tech fields, such as the digital economy in general, and artificial intelligence, automation, robotics, and machine learning, in order to stay ahead of both threats and opportunities that will continue to unfold in a rapidly digitizing global economy. Thirdly, there is need to lend your support to the African Leaders Nairobi Declaration and call to action, which defines a strong and distinctly African contribution to the global discourse on humanity's foremost existential challenge by affirming the nexus between climate action and sustainable development, and calling for increased investment in Africa to kickstart a green industrial revolution. Let me explain, because it is important. When we met in Nairobi last year, we made a deliberate decision that we were no longer going to be in the corner where we are seen as victims of climate change, and where our big preoccupation is on complaining, finger pointing, and doing what we've done for many years. That we are going to reposition our continent as a place of opportunity, great potential, and ready for investment. Because indeed, it is no longer tenable for us to continue wearing the badge of conflict and disease and poverty, when in our borders we have the largest deposits of mineral. In fact, 30% of world natural minerals and natural resources are in our continent. We have 60% of all renewable energy resources globally. We have 1.4 billion people market. In fact, by 2025, it is going to be the single largest market in the world. We have 2/3 of the world's uncultivated arable land that we can use for food security. Ladies and gentlemen, with those kind of resources, it is incorrect to classify our continent as a continent of conflict, poverty, and disease. In fact, as one Nigerian great philosopher said, that until the lion learned how to write their story, all stories glorified the hunter. So it is time for us to write our own story. And our own story is not about disease, it's not about conflict, it's not about poverty. It is about great potential that we have. It is about the opportunities that we have. It is about the investment that is awaiting, and position our continent as the only place where the next industrial revolution is going to happen. And therefore, it is important for you as legislators from EAC to appropriate this position so that together we can push a new narrative for our continent. to ameliorate the resource constraints which persistently hamper our progress, this assembly is called upon to reflect deeply on the range of opportunities and the various ways in which it can complement national and regional efforts to mobilize and allocate more resources for the regional integration agenda. And as you do that, you must have in sharp focus what we are doing in EAC and how we can complement what we are doing as a continent. In particular, I challenge you to apply your deliberative bandwidth to the forthcoming World Bank Group's International Development Association, IDA Summit. And let me explain what we are going to do in this summit. When we had this conversation last year, and our development partners realized that we were changing the narrative about our continent, and that we no longer wanted to be victims, we wanted to be part of the solution. They asked me to host the first IDA replenishment, what we are calling IDA 21 replenishment here in Nairobi, together with the World Bank. So we are going to host it on the 29th of April 2024. And what is the conversation? The conversation here is East Africa will, for the first time, have the opportunity to witness from a close quarter and contribute to the important deliberations of critical implementation of our growth agenda and development. At this event, African leaders, including many from the global south and low-income countries, will articulate a strong case for an ambitious and robust 21st replenishment of IDA, which is the largest source of development assistance and donor funding for basic social services for the world's 75 low-income countries, and to support economic transformation, especially in Africa and throughout the global south. So, let me contextualize this. You know, we have two fundamental problems, and that is why many of our countries are struggling with the debt. Two fundamental problems.